Hello everyone, welcome to Bald Guy Money, and I know many of you are concerned about the weakness we saw in gold and silver prices on Friday, and some of you are even concerned that the gold and silver mania we saw with people lining up to buy precious metals in multiple countries over the past 2 weeks is a sign of the market top. But I want to start this video by doubling down on what I said a few weeks ago and even took a little heat in the comments for, and that is we are due for a bit of consolidation in metals prices, but these pullbacks and price smackdowns that we're seeing in the market right now should be looked at not as bad things, but as opportunities to get in if you've been waiting to buy or to grow your position if you feel like you've fallen behind on your purchases. Because as I presented last week here on the channel, according to the numbers and trends that I am tracking, and if you're just finding my videos for the first time, I encourage you to watch my last 4 videos to catch up on what it is I have been talking about, but the prices I am seeing as realistic estimates likely coming in 2026, but allowing for a small margin of error no later than 2027, is an average closing price of silver at $60 an ounce with a high of $96 an ounce, and for gold, an average price of $4,500 an ounce with a high of nearly $5,800. So to keep everyone focused on securing the right amount of metals before the next move up, I want to provide you all with an update of how much gold I think you need to be in the top 20%, 5%, and 1% of gold owners. I am also going to compare my numbers to those from Grok AI, and we're going to finish the discussion by covering what holding that much gold means, especially for people planning to fund their retirement with it, by discussing how much gold I think you need to secure for retirement considering a couple pricing scenarios. Now, just before we dive in, please check out summitmetals.com if you want to buy gold and silver at a great price from a dealer you can trust while supporting my channel at the same time. And if you're a high net worth individual and need a personal touch when it comes to planning your stack and financial protection, please take advantage of Summit's consultation service and book a call with them now. Link to do that is in the video description below. But whether you're high net worth or a regular Joe, your business is important, and new customers get 5 ounces of silver at spot when you use code new customer at checkout, and I will leave the link to that deal in the video description as well. Okay, so diving in, what does it take to be a top gold stacker, and what does that mean for someone over the long term? Well, to start, I just want to put a couple things into perspective for everyone watching by reminding you all just how rare gold and silver are, as there are only about 25 billion ounces of silver and 10 billion ounces of gold that have been mined in history, and that is according to the Royal Mint. Now, when we focus in on gold, that means there are only about 1.2 troy ounces per person in the world today, and I know it may shock some of you to hear that, but these are the numbers according to the experts, and it shows you that a little gold really goes a long way in 2025. Especially when you consider, as I've mentioned in past videos, that about 59% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency, meaning they do not have that much available in savings, and most people around the world don't even make $1,000 per month. And that puts even modest amounts of precious metals out of the reach of most people, since $1,000 today will only get you about 19 ounces of silver or a quarter ounce of gold when measured at spot price. So with that reminder covered, we jump to my estimates of how many people own gold bullion in 2025. And if you want to see the full explanation of my methodology, it is covered in a past video. But as to not repeat myself here, I will link that video up in the video description below for those of you who want to check it out. But coming back to the numbers, they have been slightly revised versus the first time I covered this topic, but they still include owners both big and small. And what we see here is that about 65 million people worldwide own some type of gold bullion today, which is roughly 0.8% of the world's population. And my estimate is that there are about 350 million ounces of gold bullion held privately amongst these people, not including institutions, bullion banks, or ETF holdings, leaving about 5.5 troy ounces per stacker. Now, getting straight to the full breakdown, my stacking levels for top gold holders remain very close to the last numbers I presented here on the channel, while the US dollar value of these stacks has absolutely skyrocketed. But as things stand today, and this is of course according to my estimates, which we will compare to an AI model shortly, to be in the top 20% of gold owners on the planet, you need to have a minimum of 15 ounces of gold valued at nearly $65,000. To be in the top 5%, you need 51 ounces of gold valued at about $217,000. And to be in the elite group, the top 1%, the creme de la creme of gold stackers, it takes 165 ounces of gold, so slightly higher than in my last video. And at spot price today, that comes to a total of $700,000 worth of gold bullion. Now, although I have scrutinized my assumptions and the results of my model, I thought it was only fair to repeat what I did in my last top silver stacker video and compare my numbers to the numbers generated by the Grok AI model from X. And as you can see here, when it comes to base assumptions, Grok and I slightly differ on how many people own gold bullion, with Grok's number of 125 million people being nearly double my number. The Grok AI also assumed that there was more physical bullion owned privately than I did, but the amount of gold owned per gold stacker ended up being very close. And if you're wondering, I asked the Grok AI model to exclude ETF and other institutional holdings from these numbers, just as I did in the silver video. So we are comparing apples to apples here, which is physical bullion in hand for gold stackers. And what it came up with is what you see here on the screen, with my numbers shared in the small text underneath for comparison. But according to the AI, to be in the top 20% of gold stackers worldwide, you need 2 to 5 ounces of gold, which is much lower than my estimate of 15 ounces. Moving on to the upper levels, you can see that my numbers actually match up very closely with the AI's numbers, as Grok AI suggests that a stacker needs a minimum of 20 to 50 ounces of gold to be a top 5% stacker, compared to my estimate of 51 ounces. And to be a top 1% stacker, the AI suggests you need to hold between 100 and 250 ounces of gold, with my number of 165 ounces to be a member of that group, falling exactly within that target range. So let me know what you think of my numbers versus the AI model numbers, please, in the comments section. But before we move on to the next part of the video regarding how much gold you need for retirement, I just want to remind everyone watching this video about how rare gold is, and that we're reaching a moment where a heck of a lot of people are going to want it. So no matter where you fall in this pyramid, just understand that having some gold is good, and most likely puts you way ahead of the average person who doesn't own any gold at all. Now, with the top stacker data covered, it's time to move on to this week's viewer question, which is actually a comment, and I've gotten a few comments like this recently, but I'm featuring this one from Blaine Stafford. So hello, Blaine, if you are watching, who mentioned how the information I've been sharing has been helpful in planning for retirement. And I love to hear that, because preparing for retirement is, in my opinion, the best reason to stack precious metals. Because not only has gold outperformed the S&P 500 significantly since the year 2000, even when we factor in dividends, but gold also does its best, as I've mentioned in a few recent videos, when you need it most, and that's in the aftermath of a stock market crash or during major economic uncertainty. Gold is something that people have been able to rely on for thousands of years, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And it's why I always say that gold should be a key part of your retirement plan, which in the United States right now means making sure you can cover more than $700,000 in life expenses once you finish working. Which, if we take out roughly $2,000 in monthly Social Security payments, means you still have to cover almost half of that figure to live in an average US state, and most likely anywhere else in the English-speaking Western world where most of my viewers come from. That said, for the sake of this exercise, to remain consistent with what we did in the silver retirement video, and in recognition of the fact that many Americans retire and live off of Social Security alone, and we know that is a fact, with nothing extra to help them get by, we are going to assume that you need to retire with $250,000 in liquid investments to supplement a very basic retirement, which, by the way, is still better than most people are going to get, so please keep that in mind as we run through these numbers. Because according to the latest data, which has been updated since I covered this topic for silver a few months ago, median 401k retirement accounts remain dangerously underfunded in the United States. And I suspect it's the same thing for people in most countries around the world. And what this table on the screen shows us is that even at record gold prices, stackers in the top 20% of the gold pyramid I just showed you, holding 15 ounces of gold according to my numbers, do not have enough to cover a basic, modest retirement, even when we add the median 401k balance to that value of gold, with people approaching retirement age and at retirement age right now only being able to fund 64%, so about $160,000 of the $250,000 I said you need as a minimum to cover in retirement. Now, luckily for gold stackers, we know it's not just the price of gold that's going up, it's the value of the metal that's going up as well when we compare it to many things we buy in our daily lives. And I know this isn't the greatest example for a retirement video, but I think I demonstrated that very well when I showed you all the change in price of a new iPhone measured in dollars versus gold and silver for the 2007 launch compared to the September 2025 new iPhone launch. So, understanding that the value of gold is increasing as trust in fiat currency falls and central banks continue to buy gold as they replace US dollars on their balance sheets, if we update these calculations to reflect my 2026-2027 price target for gold at nearly $5,800 an ounce, for those of you counting on higher prices to bail you out, even when we adjust the price of 15 ounces of gold, which again is what you need to be in the top 20% of gold stackers to reflect that higher gold value, the results don't change drastically, as every single age demographic would still fall short of reaching that minimum needed to cover 15 and a half years of retirement, with people approaching retirement age only having 73% coverage when factoring in 401k holdings. In fact, it's not until you get to 25 ounces of gold at that price target I've shared that you start to get within reasonable striking distance of what I think you need to have as a minimum to cover your retirement, along with a median 401k balance. Which, if we divide that 25 ounces by the number of months you theoretically need to cover in retirement, is a little more than 1/10 of an ounce of gold per month. So, the lesson here is, even if you're a stacker on a budget and you want the stability that gold provides to protect you during retirement, and you're 50 years old or younger today, getting 1/10 of an ounce of gold each month on a schedule until you retire can mean the difference between struggling to get by on Social Security and having something extra to help you get through those harder months. So now that we've covered the numbers and my point of view that having 25 ounces of gold is a very good target to achieve in order to prepare yourself for retirement, I want to address a few criticisms I'm certain to face in the comments section. And the first one is, what if I live longer? And that's absolutely possible, and I wish that for every one of my viewers watching this right now. I also want to admit that it is possible you may need more per month to cover your expenses, especially if you have a higher standard of living. And finally, I also want to address the fact that gold price could go much higher than the target I've used in this video. Not only, in fact, is that possible, I think it's very likely. The message here is not for you to turn off your brain. It is for you to consider what your situation is, how long you plan to live, how much you want to spend, and what you think gold can reach at a minimum. Not your dream price, but plan for the worst case scenario for gold and make a plan that fits your life. But consider these numbers while you do it, because I think, again, having 25 ounces of gold, or looking at it maybe a bit differently, a minimum of a tenth of an ounce of gold for each month you plan on being retired is a great starting point and a must-have. And if buying a tenth of an ounce of gold to cover each month of your retirement is still too much to ask for those of you who are on a tight budget, and I respect that and I understand that, start with buying a gram of gold per month. But make sure you start now, because as I've demonstrated in my recent videos and with this chart in this video, it's an important pillar of a retirement portfolio, and having something is better than having nothing, especially if Social Security or your national pension program, for those of you watching this video outside of the United States, if those programs run out of money and you're left covering the entire cost of your retirement on your own. So with that said, please let me know what you think about my numbers and my approach to using gold for retirement in the comments section below. And please, if you enjoyed this content, remember to leave a like, as making noise for the algorithm helps get this video recommended to other people. And if there are people in your life who you think need to see this message and hear this message, please don't be shy. Share this video with them, as it helps my channel grow. And as I say at the end of all of my videos, please remember to take care of yourself and take care of each other. See you in the next video. Goodbye.